This is titled Husband of RT's Boss Wants to Outlaw Dissent in Russia. Again, let's see if this sort of position can be... Well, let's just see how these guys engage the spin machine. Let's get into it. Okay, this is so loud.
С одной стороны, моя профессия имеет отношение к информации. С другой стороны, когда...
State TV host. Yeah, I'd say your position is related to information.
Тут началась война, и мы воюем с 50 странами, с НАТО, это, по-моему, уже абсолютно...
We're against 50 countries and NATO. Okay, guys. Okay, buddy. I'm sure you are.
Очевидно. И каждый раз,
It's
когда...
absolutely obvious. Okay, I just want to point this out, that this is like saying the Vietnam War, we were actually at war with the Soviet Union. We weren't. The Soviets gave them some level of aid, air defense systems mostly, I think some pilots, but that is not the same thing as being at war. And just like the US-Vietnam War, we were not against, it was not a war against the Soviet Union. The Korean War, the US was not against China, even though literally the Chinese military was in the country. So it's important to recognize the difference between a state support for a belligerent and actually being at war with that country. Without sounding like an egotist, the US is the richest country on earth, and we spend so much on our military that we can't afford to give people even like rudimentary healthcare, something that every other country has done. And the reason is because if you were at war with us, the United States, Russia would get absolutely crushed. And it's one of the reasons I suspect that Russia, it probably considered at one point tactical nukes, and the US publicly stated, they were like, we have a range of options, but we would easily, one of their threats that they put out was like, we have the capacity and we will eliminate every Russian soldier who is not on Russian sovereign territory, like to a man. That was the threat. And the US can credibly back it up because we have that many resources. So I just want to understand that when you say these, when they're like, we're at war with NATO, it's no, you're at war with Ukraine, and they have some friends who are loaning them a small amount of money.
Смотришь какие-то новости, ты начинаешь себя успокаивать и думаешь, вот была Великая Отечественная война, да, вот если бы точно так же реагировали на любое колебание линии фронта, на любое движение, так бы пытались обсуждать, какие замыслы есть у военачальников, так...
The answer is, he's asking, what would happen if they, I love this, what if they reacted to every frontline fluctuation, to every movement, to the plans of commanders? The answer is, in a democracy, you want to know what your military commanders are doing. You want to know if they're doing things that make sense, because the capacity of the government, of any government, to delude itself is absolutely incredible. If you ever want to have a depressing scroll through the news, you can look through U.S., Afghan Army readiness, and you'll watch a wonderful story in personal delusion, in which year after year, month after month, the U.S. Look, here is an article from 2012, in which NPR asks, are the Afghan forces finally ready to take over the country? A senior officer says the Americans continue to coddle and this must stop. Tough love, right? Americans out front. And what kills me is like the guys on the ground are like, this is hopeless. These guys are never going to make it. This is absolutely not going to work. And then you look at the brigadier general level, a deputy operations officer. It's like 3/4 of the country is under Afghan control or moving in that direction. Afghans have the lead for their own security and their own lives, and it's day by day increasingly in Afghan hands. This is the plan, and it's on track. Another brigadier general said the Afghans are vastly better than they were 5 years ago. I was watching 8,000 or 9,000 soldiers and policemen operating together in multi-brigade operations that I had never seen before. And it's just like the difference between a regular officer and the delusion that general officers put themselves under. It's, yeah, can you imagine a country in which you weren't allowed to call this for the utter crap that it is? And bear in mind, this is NPR. This is a state media outlet. So I say these things so that you guys understand when people are, who are we to question commanders? Guy, you should question your military commanders because they do not have a bigger, better brain than you and I. They are just as capable and in some ways more capable of self-delusion than anyone else. Because, like, what commander is going to be like, I don't know anything. Am I screwing this whole war up? Is this hopeless? Then you're like, wow, I'm terrible at my job. Anyway, this is why this guy is full of it.
Так бы разные силы внутри страны вдруг сходились в борьбе друг с другом.
Then maybe they'd settle on a better strategy. I don't know. Maybe somebody would have said, hey, what if we just didn't invade Ukraine? Maybe someone should have had these debates.
Так что им хочется сказать всем, ребята, опомнитесь, пожалуйста, враг вон там, не внутри. Враг там. Главная задача не страну развалить, а страной победить. Вот, пожалуйста, все, кому что есть сказать, вот вы соберитесь в одной комнате, между собой что-то там решите, не надо, вот, пользуясь средствами массовой информации, вот устраивать все эти...
I think he's actually firing shots at who has very prominently used his own media, his social media, to do exactly this, to criticize commanders and to mobilize people against what he sees as mismanagement by the Russian government. And I think Prigozhin, while he is a piece of dirt, is a correct piece of dirt.
Движение доводить людей до какой-то излишней...
And, God forbid, maybe even that piece of dirt, by calling out the Russian government for its complete idiocy, might actually be making Russian commanders better, because at least they have to do a trivial amount of self-assessment and decide if this is actually a good idea. Again, maybe someone in the U.S. establishment could have saved us at least a couple of years. We could have shaved a couple of years off the Afghan war if we had done that a little earlier.
Истеричности, которая подхватывается... Ну, послушайте, ну... Да. Мы вообще не понимаем, что ли, что это конфликт надолго? Запад готовится к вечной войне с Россией. Не контрнаступ.
Bro, this is the West. They're preparing for an eternal war with Russia. Bro, I wish I had that level of delusion. This is... Yeah, we're not going to be fighting Russia forever. And Russia is not going to be in this fight. Like, let's be honest with ourselves here.
Не будет он 3 волны, 4, 5, ничего не изменит. Но есть определенные законы проживания войн. Если их смотреть и понимать, то...
I love how they have this whole panel and they pan to the panel, but this dude is just pontificating. This is actually like the most military brief I've ever seen.
Просто уже ничего не будет. И поэтому надо осознавать себя как страну с длинной волей. И надо выстраивать себя как страну с длинной волей. Поменьше истерить. Вот каждый истерик должен посмотреть в зеркало и спросить себя, а что ты сделал для победы? Поистерил в Телеграме недостаточно.
Wait, okay. Speaking of pieces of dirt who are almost correct. Yeah, I think a lot of people believe that getting hysterical on social media is like the same thing as helping. It's often not. And people would do better to ask themselves, is me being mad on social media helping?
Маловато.
Any cause, not specifically about this.
То есть просто, совсем маловато. Можешь что-то сделать, сделай. Можешь что-то отправить на фронт, отправь. Готов идти воевать сам, телефон 117. Набирай, записывайся в ряды Красной Армии.
The Red Army? Guys, don't know how to tell you this. The Red Army is the Soviet Army. The Soviet Union, not a state. You're the Russian Federation. Easy mistake to make.
Давай побеждай. То, что произошло на Украине, было предопределено. Не бывает распада великих империй без войны его частей. Законы истории неумолимы. Поэтому надо успокоиться и побеждать.
It's interesting also. This is weird because he literally admits that he's just, oh, yeah, we're an empire. Yeah, we're an empire. What? What are you going to do about it? Answer is nothing.
Успокоиться и побеждать.
But again, they're like, why don't people want to sign up? It's, bro, nobody wants to defend an empire in a losing war.
Ой. Так что все.
Oh my gosh, this guy is long-winded. I'm bored and I'm just reacted to him.
Все время вопросы. Ты абсолютно правильно начал, Владимир Рудольфович, с того, что надоело. Ну, надоело то, что мы читаем. И я, если правильно понимаю, читаю это столицы.
I can't tell if he's saying it's mainly the capitals. Like maybe he's making that like urban elite argument, like the salt of the earth people, they get it.
По большому счету. И рефлексируют столицы. Столица имеется в виду не Москва и Питер, а миллионники, большие города. Потому что мы живем в парадигме СВО. Я понимаю, что по какой-то юридической...
I can't tell if this is a bad translation or if he's doing that intellectual word salad where instead of making a clear point that a human brain can understand, they obscure the fact that they have no original ideas behind a bunch of like goofy words.
Казуистики международного права нельзя назвать то, что происходит, этим именем, названием, война, да? Ну так назовите это хоть пикник на обочине.
Okay, this is also another interesting point that a lot of talking head propagandists engage in, not just in Russia, but in general. It's making a point separate from the one that was asked. When you're asked a really uncomfortable question, they will often sit there and go, okay, I'm not going to answer your question, but I'm going to make a point about something that's like unrelated. So he has some bone to pick about calling a special military operation a war or not a war. And he like makes this point instead of actually getting to the point of, hey, there's a lot of like really bad news on Telegram and social media. Like, why do you think that is? It couldn't be because things are going badly, could it?
Но если внутри страны, как ты абсолютно правильно сказал, не будет единства, направленного на защиту страны, да не надо ничего, ничего не надо, мы развалимся изнутри. Страну невозможно победить нашу, и никто нас не побеждал, даже когда в Москву входили, ну в те дальние.
Okay, I'm just going to point out that you're like, no one's ever defeated our country. The Afghans defeated your country. And I say this as someone whose country was also defeated by the Afghans. I'll call an L when an L happens. And guys, you took an L.
Давние времена. Мы можем победить сами себя, и мы это доказали идеально только за 21-20 век.
Perfectly? And if you consider yourself a belligerent by aiding a conflict, you guys also lost the Spanish Civil War. So we're way behind. The Soviets also lost in their faction that they backed, since that's apparently constitutes being a belligerent, in, Ecuador? El Salvador? They took a lot of L's. Don't get me wrong, so did the U.S. Took an L in Vietnam. Took an L in Angola.
Следовательно,
Korea was like a wash.
не только цензура.
We need more than censorship, all right.
Цензура. Государство должно решиться, власть должно, как мне кажется, решиться на кардинальные поступки внутри страны. По жесточайшему, вот на мой взгляд, должно быть в нашей стране, сейчас я боюсь, что на себя навлеку все, что угодно, создана на правовой основе нетерпимость к любому мнению, которое направлено против политики государства.
Oh, buddy. Okay, the irony of a media guy shilling this kills me. Because I'm pretty sure, literally within this diatribe, he has made statements that go against the policies of the government at the time they were made. So, like, he's literally calling for his own arrest.
Ведущего войну с Западом. Это мы внутри должны понимать. По-другому у нас не получится. Потому что власть в России сакральна. И мнение власти, тем более, что вокруг этого мнения объединено абсолютное большинство народа, тоже сакрально.
I love this. Wait, okay. So he's saying authority is right and no one should question it, but it's right because so many people support it. So it's okay. Does people's support matter or not?
Мы все рассказываем о том, все говорят, Владимир Владимирович Путин об этом говорит, с нами воюют страны НАТО, блок НАТО. 50 с лишним стран с нами воюют. То есть надо настраиваться на войну. И в этом нет ничего страшного.
Okay, this is just stupid.
Потому что война...
You can say that this is the shit you can only say if you're like a well-connected government insider.
Ужасная штука, которая ведет к омоложению организма, как и роды.
Okay, war revitalizing the corpus of the state. This is actually like I know it's in vogue to call like everything fascism, but that is unironically like actual 1930s straight shooter fascism. That's one of their common points. It's part of the glorification of violence, but almost every single fascist leader has said that war is not just a necessary evil to having a country with interests, but is desirable. That war is good for the state, which is preposterous. This is literally, you'd have to be blind and stupid or delusional, like all these guys seem to be.
У женщин, на мой взгляд.
War is literally the opposite. They're like, just like childbirth. No, because by the end of childbirth, you have like more people, and at the end of a war, you have like less. It's like the opposite.
Потому что СВО это быстро.
But also, that's another classic fascist point that like and that's more actually, even the Aztecs believed that like childbirth was the feminine version of warfare. But that was when they had comparable attrition rates, okay, before modern medicine.
Прогулка. Ну так. А война это надо напряжаться.
These guys are just the like Kremlin officials who just listen to nonsense with just a completely straight face just kills me. Oh, look, YouTube. That's us. Hi, Russia.
Да, идет работа. Идет по замене всяких платформ и всего остального.
Сейчас вот люди будут говорить, как? Цензура? Как? Тигран Эдмонович позволил себе произнести слово «цензура»? Кто сказал «мать при новобрачных»? В Конституции же, ну, цитирую Маяковского, в Конституции же написано, что цензуры нет.
Надо завязывать играться с этими демократическими...
We need to censor everyone.
Что у нас вообще, знаешь, идеологии нет. И сразу вспоминается классическая фраза. Чего не хочется, всего у вас нет. Давайте...
Whatever's needed, you'll have none of it. That sounds very Soviet.
Понимаете, что время диктует определенные условия. Время диктует определенные условия.
Oh, man.
Грамотно. Первая программа, которую закроют, будет моя.
Вот, кстати.
Oh, look at this. Insight. For a brief moment, you have awareness. That's the funny thing with some of these propagandists is like they sometimes stumble onto things that are like true.
Кому запретят ездить на фронт, буду я.
Вечер с Владимиром Соловьевым – это самая рейтинговая программа политическая. Мы, телевизионщики, это все прекрасно знаем. Это не бином Ньютона, не открытие сделал.
Oh, man. Guys. Okay, it was pretty funny that even he is like, for that final moment, there was real insight.